You are charged with 2 counts. Count 1 is homicide, felony murder. That alleges that you did while in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of child abuse in the first degree, murder one Ryleigh LaVon Hurley Whitehead.
After months of investigation, a Michigan mother allegedly confessed to police that she savagely killed her 2-year-old daughter. We have the reported exchange from the interview that is just as shocking to hear as it is disturbing, moments from her first court appearance, and an alleged Google search that couldn't be worse. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Real quick, not to take away from the story in any way, but the reason we can bring you a story like this is because of the amazing support that we get from our sponsor, Upside. Now, if you don't know what it is, it's amazing. It gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas and groceries and food. So Upside is so easy. It's free, by the way. I can use it when I pump my gas, when I go to a convenience store, when I get food. And yes, this is real cashback. After you spend, money appears in your Upside account that you can transfer right into your bank account. So here's what you do. You download the Upside app for free. You buy whatever you plan to purchase. You pay as usual with a debit or credit card. You file a claim in the app, and just like that, money back. So to find out how much you could save with Upside, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR because you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. I killed her. Those 3 chilling words are what a 27-year-old mother allegedly told authorities in Grand Rapids, Michigan, about her 2-year-old daughter. I killed her. It's quite the apparent confession, which is why it's not surprising that she's facing homicide, felony murder, and child abuse in the first-degree charges. What may surprise you is how all of this apparently unfolded. That's what I want to get into, including why it took months for there to be an arrest. And by the way, the woman I'm about to mention to you was actually in the news 2 years prior to this. And whether or not that plays into this current case, something we need to address. I'm not going to be breaking all this down alone. I'm bringing on right now Randy Kessler, family law attorney. Randy, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we even get into the specifics of this case, and there's a lot to get into, in your experience, how often do parents kill their children? And what are the reasons that you see this happening, if you can even try to make sense of why this happens? Because I will tell you, as a preview of what the allegations are here, when I first heard this story, and then I heard what she allegedly told investigators, unfortunately, being in this business for as long as I've been in, it wasn't surprising to me. It wasn't surprising to me, the apparent rationale. But in your experience, how often are we seeing cases like this? And what are the reasons that parents kill or allegedly kill their children?
I think my answer is very similar to yours, Jesse. Until I was on Law&Crime, until I started, helping you guys and doing some commenting, I would have thought 1 in a million, 1 in a billion. But I'm seeing it more and more. I don't see it in my own practice. I don't see it in my own community often. On the other hand, when we see it, it makes news. So we probably think that it happens more than it does. It's still a very, very rare occurrence. In general, the Departments of Family and Children Services across the country do a better job than in most countries, right? In most third world countries, most European countries, we get involved, we put kids in foster care, we get kids out of dangerous environments, usually in time to avoid death. Sometimes it doesn't avoid injury, sometimes it doesn't avoid some horrible mistreatment, but a parent, maybe a foster parent, maybe a stranger, maybe stranger danger, uncle, aunt, but a parent killing a child still seems very, 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 very rare to me, which may be why it's even more newsworthy in this situation.
Well, it's newsworthy for a couple of reasons, including if the allegations are true about what she apparently told investigators. Usually these cases, you're trying to read between the lines. Why would a parent kill their child? What was going on? Were they trying to get a new life? Were they sick and tired of being a parent? Did they want to be free? Whatever it might be, we're always guessing between the lines. I'm going to be reading apparent transcripts from this interview that she did with investigators where, again, if this is true, she's innocent until proven guilty, but if this is true, I mean, she's pretty much laying it out for why this happened.
Wow.
According to Wood TV, News 8, there is this probable cause paperwork in the case that reveals that Kent County Sheriff's deputies, they show up to the home of this woman that we're talking about here, Irene Whitehead, that this is back on September 3rd. We're in December right now. So September 3rd. And what they find is Whitehead's young 2-year-old daughter, Ryleigh. She is reportedly not breathing, she's not responding, and she ends up dying right there on the scene. Whitehead was allegedly the only one home. Now, Randy, before we go any further, that's a key point, right? Because even before an alleged confession, home alone with a young child who dies, that is very problematic. I talked about this before, right? Child victims are different than adult victims because unless you can claim there was a complete accident that happened, if they're under your care and custody, it seems to me that it's very difficult for a caregiver to argue away liability, right? I mean, these are vulnerable victims. They're under your care. If you're the only one home, that in and of itself creates a legal problem for a defendant, right?
Right, because there's a heightened responsibility when there is a dependent, somebody who is relying on you for survival, not just for food and shelter, but to keep them safe. It's an even higher level. That's why we allow, parents to go home, and you know what it's like. They let you go home from the hospital with your child, and they don't give you a manual because society trusts that parents will take care of their children and make sure that they're safe. You don't live up to that responsibility. You've got other issues aside from possibly murdering or harming a stranger. This is somebody that you were vested with responsibility for.
Here's the thing. She wasn't arrested on the spot. It wasn't clear exactly what happened to Ryleigh, right? Maybe it was an accident. Maybe something happened. And we'll get into health issues with Ryleigh in a minute. But she wasn't arrested on the spot, Irene Whitehead. So no, she was booked into jail on Thanksgiving. She was arraigned on December 1st. So why so long? Why did it take months? This is where it gets incredibly disturbing as investigators uncovered some damning potential evidence against this mother in the past few months. This investigation lasted several months. So as detectives, first of all, they get a hold of a video from August 25th. And in this video, you can hear a child seemingly saying, so this is likely one of Whitehead's daughters. She also reportedly has a 7-year-old. "You never wanted me. You only want me to die. I know you want me to die. Just kill me already." Then, let's talk about Google. 5 days after Ryleigh died, authorities say this mother, Irene Whitehead, Googled, quote, "How hard is it to prove if the cause of death is suffocation by bag and toddler?" And according to authorities, she admitted she searched for that. Randy, talk to me about that.
So if the question is why wasn't she arrested immediately, we're all victims of our own history. The department, the law enforcement agencies. I see a lot of parents who are wrongfully accused, and it's a balance, right? Because who would assume or who would think that a parent would do this to their child? So you give them the benefit of the doubt and you say this must have been an accidental death. You also need to make sure you have the evidence to arrest somebody. You don't want to arrest them and then have them clam up. Maybe they're going to step in it. Maybe they're going to say something. And thank goodness she didn't run and didn't go anywhere else. But yeah, hindsight's 20/20, and hindsight should have been arrested on the spot.
Well, they might not have had access to these communications, which, by the way, I'm going to get into what the ME found too. But that communication, right? Well, that Google search, I can't tell you how many times it's the Google searches, right? Maybe the Chat GPT searches now, which are now becoming part of evidence, that tell so much of a defendant's inner workings, what they were thinking. Unless you have a defendant who says, "I didn't search for that, someone else had access to my device." There's a context for what that is. It's difficult. Now, Fox 17 reporting that another piece of potential evidence is this apparent online chat conversation that Whitehead had with her mother back in April of 2025. Okay, so this is before Ryleigh's death. Quote, "I'll be getting rid of most of their stuff then." Her mother asks, "Why?" "Then maybe they'll behave more." This is what Whitehead says. Mother responds, "Not when they just want your attention." Whitehead says, "This is why I only want one kid." The mom writes, "Well, you have two." And Irene Whitehead says, "Yeah, two with no help at all." So they're investigating her. They're obtaining this evidence. And then we have the interview on Thanksgiving. Now, Randy, I'm going to need your perspective on this. I want to read out these full transcript segments that were obtained by 13 on your side. Detective Goring asks Irene Whitehead, "Why did you put the bag over Ryleigh's mouth? What was your intentions?" Whitehead responds, "I just wanted it to stop." Detective asks, "What were your intentions?" Whitehead responds, "I thought maybe if she was gone, it would all stop." Detective asks, "What were your intentions?" Whitehead says that she wouldn't be here anymore. Detective asks, what were your intentions? That she'd die. That's what Whitehead responds. Detective says, you put the bag over Ryleigh's mouth with the intent to kill her? And Whitehead reportedly nods slightly. Detective says, I need to hear you say it. Whitehead responds, I just wanted it all to stop. Then you have Detective Kirkland. Nope, that's not what he asked. Try it again. Let yourself be honest. At least give yourself that. Irene Whitehead responds, I killed her. Detective Goring, why did you keep putting Ryleigh in the hospital? Was that because you were doing that to make her look so sick so later on you could kill her? Irene Whitehead responds, I wanted to kill her. Detective Goring asks, when did you decide that you wanted to kill her? Irene Whitehead responds, right after she was born. Detective Goring asks, what made you finally kill her? I couldn't take it anymore, Whitehead responds. Detective Goring, what couldn't you take anymore? Whitehead, being a parent, hearing her screaming all the time, the cries. Detective Goring, she was a normal, healthy baby girl. Besides you, wasn't she? Irene nodded. Detective Goring, there was nothing wrong with her, was there? Irene Whitehead reportedly shakes her head no. Detective Kirkland, what other ways have you thought about killing your kids? Whitehead responds, with a gun. Detective Kirkland, huh? Whitehead responds, with a gun. That's the reason why I got rid of mine, because I can't bring myself to do it like that. Detective Kirkland, what else? Whitehead responds, a rope. Detective Kirkland says, rope? How are you going to do that? Irene Whitehead responds, tie it around their necks. And apparently after this back and forth, law enforcement said Irene Whitehead signed a written statement that said, I killed them, Rye/Leo. Who's Leo? Well, Leo is seemingly in reference to her 2-month-old son that died back in 2021. In fact, there was a GoFundMe that was set up at the time by Whitehead that raised $3,400 at the time that said, quote, help us pay for the funeral and cremation costs of Leo, was 2 months old. He passed away on September 25th, 2021 in his sleep. He has 2 older sisters who miss him dearly. I'm a single mom of 3. I can't afford a memorial for him, and I'm not one to ask for much, so anything helps. Thank you so much. He was such a happy baby, loves listening to country music. Now, 13 on Your Side apparently asked the Kent County Sheriff's Office about whether Whitehead is now being investigated in connection with Leo's death in the aftermath of what they're accusing her of doing with respect to Ryleigh, and they reportedly said that this is an open investigation. They can't share any more details right now. Let me just go back to the interview, then I'll get back to Randy. So Detective Goring asks, why did you keep putting her in the hospital? Irene Whitehead responds, because there was always people around. I didn't want them finding out what I was doing, so I'd make it look like a breathing episode. I tell them it was just a breathing episode. Detective Goring, and how did you create the breathing episodes, the ones you recorded, the ones that are on your phone that you sent prior to her death? How did those breathing episodes get created? I put my hand over her mouth and watch her squirm. And then you suffocated her? Irene Whitehead nods. Detective Kirkland asks, was that a yes? Whitehead says, yeah. Detective Kirkland, you suffocated her? Irene Whitehead apparently nods. Detective Kirkland, on repeat? Irene Whitehead apparently nods. And detectives noted in the probable cause document that Irene nodded when they asked if she was responsible for Ryleigh going to the hospital every time. And Detective Goring asks the first time, but the ones where they did the big workups on her, where she stopped having them, and then back in June when she started having them again this year, every single one of those is because you suffocated her? And Irene Whitehead responds, yeah. And authorities say that this little girl did in fact have to go to the hospital for these breathing incidents, but the allegation now is that she caused them. Randy, I know that's a lot. It's not every day you get this apparent confession, black and white like this. First of all, your reaction to this, and I can't see any way that a defense attorney would be successful right now in saying that this can't come in. I mean, unless her Miranda rights weren't read or that she was coerced in some way, but by all accounts, reading this, she was quite clear on what she allegedly did.
So my sophisticated legal analysis is, this is all kinds of messed up. I mean, you just don't get this much damning evidence. You know, she can't say it was a lack of, rational thought. She's not got an insanity defense. There's all sorts of premeditation. She thought about different ways to murder her child. She's, speaking voluntarily. She had every opportunity to not talk. She's seen enough TV shows, even if the police didn't warn her, but I'm sure they warned her. This seems like a very thorough investigation. I can't imagine they didn't Mirandize her and didn't tell her she has a right to a lawyer. I agree with you. I don't know how that doesn't come in. I don't know how she has a trial. She's not sympathetic whatsoever. I think the other child's issue just leads to her pleading guilty to both. I don't understand why they'd even spend the time. She's going to go to jail for life for this one.
Yeah, and you have to imagine it's a recorded interview and also a written statement. And and by the way, detectives are very methodical. They're getting her to admit to each element of the crime. Although I will be clear, what she's charged with, you don't actually need to prove intent to kill or premeditation to kill. She's charged with felony murder. I'll get to that in a second. But you know what's really interesting, Randy? You know what's really interesting? It was reported that the medical examiner's office ruled the cause and manner of Ryleigh's death as indeterminate. And it was only after all of this other stuff came out that they ruled it a homicide. In other words, if there was no Google search, right? If there was no alleged confession, would we even see charges? The forensic evidence might not have been so clear that this was a killing.
Right, and you can't extract from that the person that would be suspicious is the mother of the child. I mean, if you're the investigator, if you're the forensic, if you're the person doing the autopsy, you're thinking, well, the only person around was the mother, so certainly I can't imagine it would be the mother. Even though that's not scientific, it's still human nature, right? We just don't want to point the finger at a mother doing this to a daughter. It just doesn't make sense. So, they were not going to find that it was murder absent something extra, like you pointed out. Now that we have not just one thing extra, we've got a confession, period. I mean, it should be a savings on resources and the savings for the state to not have to spend a lot of money trying this case and defending appeals when you have this much clear confession.
What about investigating her for Leo's death?
It's got to be done, right? Leo has a right to be looked into, investigated, and vindicated, and justice for Leo. Leo's going to get his justice when mom goes to jail for the murder of his sister. But it doesn't hurt until they plead. If there's a plea, she's going to wrap that plea together because she's not getting off with anything less than life without the possibility of parole for this one. So I don't think, if I was a taxpayer, why spend the money? Let's ask her to go ahead and plead guilty to both. I just don't see how the resources need to be spent. And it's going to be a harder case to prove. It's older. It's more ancient. And then, of course, that's going to make law enforcement look bad. Why didn't you investigate it back then? Do they want to open that can of worms?
Well, I mean, look, it helps them if she admitted to killing both of them. If that's what she's saying, I think there needs to be some answers as to what happened to Leo. Now, I will tell you this much. Right now, Whitehead is facing 2 charges. So, homicide, felony murder. This is that while in the perpetration or attempt of child abuse in the first degree, she did murder Ryleigh. This is life without parole. Count 2, child abuse in the first degree, that she did knowingly or intentionally cause physical harm to a child. This is life in prison or any term of years. Now, again, Randy, they don't even need to prove intent to kill. They don't even need to prove this was a premeditated killing. This is an easier path to secure a conviction, right?
It is, although I'm sort of surprised and interested and curious why they didn't just say intentional murder in homicide 1. Clearly, now you see that was her intent, and she wanted that in her mind, talking to her mom, talking to Google. Sounds like it was premeditated. I don't understand why it's not intentional, unless maybe, like you said, it's easier to prove. That way you don't have to convince a jury that mom had these evil intents. It's harder to prove that somebody wanted to kill their child than to prove that somebody wanted to hurt their child and a murder or death occurred while they were committing child abuse.
You mentioned how this case might be resolved, and I'll get to the arraignment in a second, but a plea deal? What would that even look like? I mean, I can't imagine she's going to get some sort of relief here. Obviously, to save the time, the expense, the heartache of a trial and having jurors having to sit through all this. But what would her defense attorney be asking for? What would prosecutors be open to? What would a resolution of this case look like?
Yeah, there's not much incentive for the prosecution to offer any kind of deal, any kind of discount on the time served or anything like that, because they've got her dead to rights. Unless there's maybe a better facility where she could be held, maybe there's some better treatment for her to be held. But The question for her, it seems, and I've watched the video and I see, how she reacted and responded to the judge. She seems sane. She seems like she knows what's coming. She seems almost to be accepting of what's going to happen. Maybe she just doesn't want to go through the ordeal. A lot of people in that position, this is their last chance at freedom, their last chance to put on civvies, right? To put on normal clothes and to be out in public because they're going to spend the rest of their life behind bars in an orange jumpsuit. But other than wanting to do that, the benefit to her, maybe there's a 1 in a million chance that 12 people on a jury can't agree that she's capable of doing that to her child. I don't know what they could offer. I can't think of it except better treatment, maybe the possibility of parole. But other than that, why would they even offer that when they have her dead to rights? But if they want to eliminate any risk of any possible crazy sympathetic jury, then they go ahead and say, okay, we'll give you the possibility of parole if you plead guilty and save us the time and effort. That's about, and I don't think they're going to do it.
And you know what's chilling about this is that if you take all these allegations as true, if you take everything she said as true, she couldn't handle being a mother anymore. She couldn't handle the scream. She couldn't handle the crying. So what's your result now? You kill your child and you leave your other one. I don't know the custody of your, who that daughter goes to now, but you spend the rest of your life in a cell. It's really disturbing on multiple levels. But let me tell you, you mentioned something, her demeanor, right? So we go to her arraignment. We got video of this. So this is her arraignment. This is her court appearance. She's read the charges. She's told about her rights. And she only spoke in the affirmative here and there. Take a look.
Do you understand what you've been charged with and the maximum penalties?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to enter a not guilty plea on your behalf. Have you had an opportunity to discuss your rights with Mr. Zambon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you have any question about your rights?
No, ma'am.
And then one of the issues was bond, where her attorney, Richard Zambon, tried to get her a bond, arguing that she has no criminal history, she's been in the area for 7 years, she has strong ties to the community, that she's been at the same address for 4 months with her boyfriend, that she was employed at Arby's. Basically, she's not a danger, right? She's not a risk of flight. I'm assuming those are the arguments. But then Kent County 63rd District Judge Kirsten Holes really disagreed.
I do find that based on the statements in the probable cause affidavit, proof of guilt is evident and presumption is great in this matter. And so I think that this is an appropriate case to deny bond. So Ms. Whitehead, you will remain in the Kent County Jail pending those hearings, and your attorney can opt to revisit the issue of bond, bail, release. I understand you have no criminal history, but obviously the allegations are horrific.
Randy, denying of bond here, not surprising, right?
Right. Absolutely not. I mean, the lawyer, there's some cases you go in and you have a fighting chance. And there's some cases you go in and you are perfecting the record. You're making sure that you're not guilty of ineffective assistance of counsel. You're making the arguments. And there are some good objective arguments, right? She's employed, no criminal history, otherwise stable. But the lawyer knew there was not going to be bond. And the judge, can you imagine the pushback and what would happen if the judge granted this woman a bond? And part of it might be for the woman's own protection. If this woman is guilty or if she's innocent and being accused of this, she's probably a risk to herself and to others. No question she was not going to get a bond. But they had to go through it and they had to make the argument. The judge had to consider it. It also impressed me about our system. If you think about around the world, the fact that the judge treated this defendant with respect, almost with kindness, with, compassion, making sure she understood her rights, making sure she knew that this lawyer was going to be there, asking her if she could afford a lawyer. It makes me feel good about our system, that at least the worst of the worst gets treated the right way until found guilty.
And also, it's not just because she's a kind person, it's you have to clearly lay out everything for the defendant so that they can't make an argument later on that their rights were violated, that procedure wasn't followed, that their conviction could be overturned. So there is a reason for this as well. Now, I have to talk about this, Randy. 13 on your side actually interviewed Irene Whitehead all the way back in 2023. This was when Ryleigh was just 3 months old and had to be taken to the hospital because Ryleigh was diagnosed apparently with this rare form of a common virus known as HPIV4. It's also known as parainfluenza 4. And at the time, Whitehead told the outlet, quote, "They said that the fourth strand is commonly undiagnosed. They don't see many of them, but also this fourth strand is not on the respiratory palette that they do for the respiratory viruses. So they don't test for it as often. She's doing a lot better. She still has a little cough and some congestion, but she's doing a lot better." And she added, "Definitely trust your gut instinct, especially when it comes to your children." And now she allegedly admitted to killing her daughter. So it's kind of put that statement in a different context. And by the way, in that 2023 interview, she referenced Leo. Quote, "I have went through this before. I had a son 2 years ago who passed away from parainfluenza. He just had a cough, and then the next day he passed away." Now, Randy, when you look at this, when you look at these statements, are they going to come into, are they part of this investigation? Are they relevant? Are they questionable? Do they come into a potential trial? Talk to me about this.
They might have, but for her confession, right? Without her confession, she could say, look, this is hereditary. I mean, our family, our children all have these breathing issues. They have these viruses, and I've been double cursed. My first child died of this. My second child died of this. Maybe that would be plausible to a jury if you didn't have the confession, if you didn't have the discussion with their mother, if you didn't have the Google search. Yeah. Now all that's out the window. Now it looks like a pattern of murder.
Let me just end on this point. So Rothridge Funeral Home posted an obituary of Ryleigh before all of this came out about her mother. And it says that Ryleigh Whitehead passed away on Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, at the age of 2, after dealing with breathing problems since she was 2 months old. Ryleigh was born in Greenville, Michigan on June 9th, 2023 to her mother, Irene Whitehead. She was a very active toddler, always playing with her siblings and seeing the moo-moos, the cows at Nana and Papa's house, and chasing the chickens, and seeing the voom-vooms, the motorcycles at Yuma and Papa's house. Ryleigh's memory will always be cherished by her mom, Irene, dad, Holden, siblings, and Uma, Papa, and by many more that loved her. Randy Kessler, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.